Adam Hamilton joins us on the line from Australia to talk all things harness jewels around the Australians. Adam, afternoon our time, morning to you. I believe that the stress is finally over and the Australians have made their way to Christchurch.
Matty Cross, good to be on with you and excited to be heading to the airport in just a couple of days and getting over for another harness jewels. Yes, a lot of stress for the Aussies involved, a lot of stress for Darren Williams, who is a liaison with the Aussies, I guess, for Harness Racing New Zealand to get them across to the jewels, and less than ideal being stranded in Auckland for a couple of days, but they did get down very early this morning into Christchurch, and they'll now be able to get into a bit of normality as they prepare for the big day on Saturday, already having been dealt a blow last Friday with a less than ideal set of barrier draws, starting with one of our queens of harness over here, Major Occasion, who now faces a really, really big challenge and needs a stack of luck in the opening race on Jules Day, Matt.
Yeah, what do you make of her form? She's obviously good enough to sit outside Dream About Me in the Group 1 and finish into second position. Just line up her form for us and where you feel she sits.
Oh, she's an outstanding mare. I'll be very open and say I think on straight out ability, there's just nothing between her and Ali Mack or Al Mack. There's just nothing between them. I've seen a lot of both. She's been a massive improver this season, Major Occasion. Right through her 2- and 3-year-old season, she was probably just a couple of lengths off the very best, but she's really, really toughened up. So that performance in the ladyship was outstanding to do the work that she did and still be there at the finish. She's got it all. She's got gate speed, she's got strength, and she's got a really good dash at the end of her races. But unfortunately, the draw has taken away from some of her major weapons being inside the second row. I know the favourite's drawn outside the front row, but it's still a decided advantage over Major Occasion, who will need a lot of luck from that draw. But I'll be honest and say, had she drawn better than the favourite, I would have been tipping her to win this race. Now she needs a lot of luck, but she is absolutely good enough to win this race if things go right at the right time for her. Where does she sit in the score of Aussie mares? We've just had 3 big mares races in Victoria. I think Tell Me Tales is sort of right at that top level, and I think Major Occasion is alongside of her. So you're not seeing a second stringer. You're seeing a mare coming to the jewels who I believe is as good as any mare in Australia right now.
$7.50, tab.co.nz if you'd like to follow Adam in there. Good enough to run 150.4, drawn 1 the second row. If she gets off, the 750 might become half of that. What about Lulu De Mons, Adam? Of course, she's out of a Jewels winner in Elusive Chick, the Jones and Goadsby team. They've been going well on both sides of the Tasman. Her Australian form compared to our 2-year-old form here in New Zealand, is she a top 3 chance?
I don't think she is. I think she's a nice filly, and they've definitely done the right thing going over there. We know she hasn't had a lot of luck in her racing over in New Zealand so far. Look, she looked a nice filly. She didn't look a standout at all, or she didn't look one of our absolute best in the glimpses we saw of her in Australia before going across. It's a little bit hard with our juveniles for the jewels because they're not up and going as early as perhaps some of yours are. So I think from the draw, I'm really hoping that she can get a nice economical trip, and she might be sort of a top 5 chance. But you've seen as much of her, Matt, and all of your fans as we have. When she went across there, it was a guessing game how she'd measure up with the Kiwis. You've got a really nice crop and 2 outstanding fillies in Sweet On Me and Amazing Dream, obviously. They're well and truly head and shoulders above her. Spellbound's drawn nicely as well. So, and even Tiffany Rose is a nice filly. So I would say she's a midfield chance, potentially a tiny sneaky hope of getting into third if everything went absolutely right. Now she's drawn nicely, but she's not going to trouble the best of the fillies in this race.
Phil Williamson of Victoria. I speak of Anton Galino, brings a couple of runners over. The fantastic stable of trotters, Yabby Dam Racing, of course, the last couple of years, Adam, have just grown from strength to strength. They have two runners. In race 5, the Group 1 3-year-old all catched up, and Majestic Player goes around in the 4-year-old. What can you tell our New Zealand punters about those two?
Yeah, two nice trotters who are typical of Anton and the Yabby Dams operation in that they're well-mannered. They've got really good gate speed. One of them gets a chance to show that gate speed in all cashed up, which we see, of course, in this 5th event, the 3-year-old Ruby. Thankfully, he's drawn the front row. Now, he used his gate speed and he looked good winning a couple in a row in slightly easier races. He then stepped up to the longer trip in the New South Wales Trotters Derby, and he had to do a lot of early work in that race. Caligula, who was considered the main danger, they spent a lot of petrol early, and I think it set it up for Zeebeck to come and beat them both. But all cashed up still fought on well at the end of the long trip there and hadn't had a lot of experience over the long trip. Comes back to the sprint trip, which will be more suitable, does have good gate speed, but it'll be interesting how much of that gate speed, just whether all cashed up is blazing out of the gate and can get across some of these key rivals drawn inside, like a lot of muscle, Cheerful, Kratos, all drawn inside of it. I think all cashed up, he would need to get across and at least into the running line, ideally get across them all and then perhaps take a trail to be any sort of winning hope. But he's a nice trotter and he's got that speed and he'll be suited by the trip. And he was a legitimately good runner, Group 1 level, in that New South Wales Trotters Derby last time. So he's going to need everything to go right to win, but he'll be very, very competitive if he can use that gate speed and get into a good spot, Matt.
Young Jason Lee takes the drive aboard both of them, Adam. What can you tell us about him?
Oh, he's the rock star of our driving ranks. He is. I absolutely love him. He's got a bit of charisma. He's he's got dash about him. He gets them off the gate really quickly. He makes decisions in races. I think I love the fact he's across to be part of this series. He's one of those people, and you've had a few come through the ranks, obviously, like your Dexter Dunns and Zachary Butchers and those sort of people that, they're really marketable, and Jason Lee's that sort of person. So, a lot of the Kiwis will already know him, but anyone who doesn't, he'll leave his mark when he makes that trip across. Obviously, he's aboard Majestic Player as well for Anton and Yabby Dams. Majestic Player has been a really good improver this season. Just the draw makes it so hard for Majestic Player, and I would say it's just a rough place chance now that he's drawn the back row, unfortunately.
Falcon Stride goes around to the Group 1 IRT Emerald. It's 7 minutes to 4 on Saturday. It's another one that's come up with a tricky barrier draw, Adam. Falcon Stride. What's the gate speed like?
Yeah, gate speed's good, and we expect that, don't we, from Shane and Lauren Tritton's horses. So do they sort of chance their arm? It would look a big ask when you've got all of the marquee horses, like even Henry Hubert drawed 1, Turn It Up in 4, Ashley Locaz in 6, Fun at the Beaches there as well. So I know they've got a terrific opinion of this horse. They think that he can be competitive against really good horses, but obviously they wanted a draw and they haven't got it. Even if they use the gate speed, you would suspect he's going to have to spend too much petrol to get across and get into a spot. So I think the draw has pretty much ruled him out, unfortunately. But I absolutely applaud Shane Tritton, who, his business model, Matt, is to be part of the big dance and have horses in big races. And let's not understate the value as well of having Emilio Rosati being part of the jewels, given what an important investor he is in harness racing on both sides of the ditch. But can they take home a piece of the pie? Shane Tritton's probably a little bit more upbeat than me, but I think the draw has probably ruled Falcon Stride out now that he's outside the front there.
Yeah, Emilio Rosati, a great chance of picking up the 2-year-old trot earlier on as well with Ultimate Stride, who comes up with the front row barrier draw. Pete's Big Jim in the last follows out a gate speed horse in the form of Heisenberg. Adam, we saw Pete's Big Jim here 12 months ago. Much improvement since then?
That's a query. On face value, you'd say you'd say there has been no improvement. He's been so lightly raced, and what we've seen of him hasn't been up with that terrific run that he produced against some of your best as a juvenile last season. Look, they don't travel for the sake of it. His preparation has been specific, and he's been given a break, and he's been set to run first up in this. He should get an economical run. It matters probably exactly how far back he is on the inside, and he needs an economical run. What we can say is that, historically, Matt, this has probably been one of the strongest races of Jules Day. But no disrespect to these horses, but it's lacking depth this year, and that will certainly play into his corner. He might be some sort of place chance, but, his trial was quite good the other day. He's been sharpened up again for it. But again, we've got to be honest and say, if he ran a place, I reckon Team Tritton would be absolutely thrilled, and he's going to need a lot of luck to go right to do that. But outside of Jesse Duke and perhaps, Grand Chico and Heisenberg, there's not a lot of depth of talent in this race, and he should get an economical trip. Maybe he can poke through and get into a top 4 finish if everything goes right.
Adam, thank you so much for joining us here this morning. Pressed suit, iron shirt. We'll see you on Saturday. Adam Hamilton there from Australia joining us to give us his thoughts around the Australians on Saturday. Just read on Twitter as well, if you caught the Australian hurdle the other day from Sandown, checkered flag was successful, and that unfortunately has suffered quite a serious joint injury, so it looks as though he may be out for some time.